Hello my beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm very excited to do because I'm going to be ranking my Natasha Denona palettes, specifically mid-size palettes, and I do have one palette that's on a larger size. Today I have 7 palettes total to put into ranking for you, and as far as my mini Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes that will come out in a separate video, I think that they deserve their own spotlight. And before we get started, I would like to welcome new visitors and viewers to my channel. Hi, my name is Eve. I love all things beauty. Here on my channel I share about makeup, skincare, hair care, and at times lifestyle things like fashion, travel, and vlogs. And if that sounds interesting to you, I hope you stick around, enjoy this video, give this a big thumb up, and I invite you to subscribe to my channel before you leave today. And now without further ado, let's dive into ranking all my mid-size Natasha Denona palettes. 7 palettes in front of me. I've purchased all of them with my own money, and I am going to rank them from the least favorite to the most favorite. The look that I am wearing on my eyes today, I filmed for my Instagram Reels. That should be up already when you're watching this video. So some of the newer palettes from this stash, I do have dedicated videos on. I film makeup look tutorials in the format that is unique to my channel, and a lot of my subscribers became my subscribers because of those videos. So I'll have the playlist link for you in the description box if you wanted to get inspired from the look tutorials that I created. Enough said, let's get into rankings. So on the spot number 7, I do have a palette that definitely didn't meet my expectations. Let's just say it like that. I know it's a bold statement, but this is a Sunset palette from Natasha Denona. This is a palette that retails over $100. I'm not really sure if this palette is still available. It was until recently. So this is a palette that comes in a very distinct packaging. It's a larger format. It has a leather feel to it, a beautiful metallic. But if you look at the side of the packaging, it almost has this like foam situation going on here. To my opinion, it just looks unfinished. When I know that original price for this palette was $128, I do not want to get something that looks unfinished. I want a luxury packaging, and this doesn't look luxury to me at all. It also had this like weird insert that every time I use this palette, this little insert would be on my way. However, I also didn't want to get rid of it because it has names and codes for all the shades, which is very relevant for my channel. So as far as the color story, I mean, we've seen this before. Is this unique? Not in any way. Not in any way. We've seen these colors million and million times again from so many different brands. The formula is nice, but it's not that sophisticated formula that we're getting these days from Natasha Denona. It's just more of like a simplified version. The shimmers are also just okay to my opinion. They are not like sparkling foils. That's her like newer formulas. Even though I'm a huge neutrals lover, I love my warm neutrals, and this is kind of like my comfort zone here. This specific yellow shade felt very powdery. This palette, as much as it feels natural to me to like it, I feel like it's outdated, and I prefer to reach to my other warm tone eyeshadow palettes over this one. On the spot number 6, I do have a palette that I'm wearing today on my eyes. This palette is considerably new to me. I only just picked it up in December, about 6 months ago. To my best knowledge, this palette has been discontinued, or maybe about being discontinued, and I know that I personally wanted it for my eyeshadow palette collection. This is a Love palette. When I saw this palette, I was really drawn to this red and then some of the pink shimmers here. I also like the combination of like rosy tones and reddish tones with purple, and I really appreciate that there's silver, so you can kind of neutralize your colorful looks a little bit. However, the reason why I'm ranking this palette a little bit towards the end is because even though I'm so excited about all these shades, all the pinks and reds here in this palette, they are all very different when you look at them. But for some reason, when you blend them together, the looks come out very similar and kind of blend into each other the way that there is really no definition. And this shade here, I would hope that it would have a little bit more of that white base, and it would give you like a very opaque pastel shade, and unfortunately it doesn't do it. If you want it to come out that way, you would really need to put it on a white base right away. And as far as this corner goes, I really like it. I really like the purples, and I really love this silver shade. Everything looks beautiful. This cream to powder formula is very beautiful. On the spot number 5, I do have a palette that many of you may get surprised by. This is a bronze palette. I do love my warm neutral. I tend to reach to warm neutrals like naturally. I love every single shade here. The quality is so beautiful. The shimmers is beautiful. The mattes are beautiful. There's really no very light shade. So if you wanted like a really bright inner corner, you would have to use a different palette, or use your highlighter. You definitely get that bronzy goddess vibe out of this palette, and I do love that there is depth with these darker shades here. Not that I don't love this palette, I do, but the reason why I'm ranking this again towards the end more so because most looks that I create with this palette, they kind of look the same. That's why this palette ended up on number 5. And the spot number 4, I do have a palette that is somewhat in the same category as a bronze palette. It is somewhat monochromatic. However, I feel like I reached for it more than I did with the bronze palette. And this is a retro palette. Again, this is a monochromatic palette. However, I feel like there are enough shades, variety of shades in this palette that you can create somewhat distinct looks. Definitely get a depth here with the darker shades. However, you also get much lighter shades here, which would give you an option to create much lighter looks if you want it. If you follow me since December, you know that I bought a good stack of these mid-size palettes for my birthday. I have a birthday on New Year's Eve, so that was my gift for myself. I know it is considerably new to me, so I use this quite a bit in winter because I just enjoy that I could do a little bit of color and a little bit of neutral looks if I wanted to. The shimmers are very beautiful here. Because there is a little bit of a variety here, this palette definitely gives me more inspiration. On spot number 3, I do have a very fun palette. So when I saw it, I knew I had to have it because I really do love the colors that are in this palette. So on the spot number 3, I have a retro Glam palette. I do have a dedicated video for this palette with inspirational look tutorials. I love these colors. I think it's definitely more unique to what Natasha Denona has been making and launching with her mid-size palettes. I personally very much enjoy dusty rose tones. To me, I consider teals neutrals because it's kind of a color, but it's nicely muted. That way it's not overwhelming. If you are a neutral lover and you only have been using neutrals, going straight into like primal colors could be overwhelming. To my opinion, this is where this kind of muted color story comes in. I'm also one of those people that used to be afraid of color like years ago, but this is the area where I feel like it's not scary. Okay, if you are trying to get into color, this is somewhat comfortable because again, you can take this color, blend it out, and maybe pair it with a little bit more neutral color and ease yourself into color that way. That's how my journey with colorful eyeshadows started. I generally love this eyeshadow palette and the color story, and the packaging was so stunning. They definitely thought outside of the box a little bit with this one. I do reach for this palette. However, I noticed that it is a companion palette for me. I would use 2 or 3 shades out of here and then I would have to reach for another palette. One reason for that being is that I don't think that these 2 shades, like the darker shades here in the palette, they are dark enough. So for those reasons, this palette took a 3rd spot. We're down to first 2 spots and no one's gonna be surprised with these 2 choices. I still knew what my number 1 palette would be, but at one point I almost changed my mind and then I took it back because I am loyal. I'm loyal to the things that I love. On the number 2 spot, I do have Yucca palette. Yucca palette is the newest launch from Natasha Denona, and this is the summer launch for 2023. This palette just wiped everything that was existing and launching around it. It just took everybody's attention like no other. This is such a beautiful palette. Talking about me loving my warm neutrals, especially in a warm season. I do live in Florida. It's primarily warm here, so this gives me even more reason to use my warm palettes. I like a lot of things about this palette. I love these 4 shimmers. They're sparkling foils. Very sparkly, very foily, very smooth formula. However, they do not look heavy on the eyelids and do not accentuate the texture if you may have some. I love this coral shade. I love this shade right here. It looks a little bit more orangey in the palette. However, it is more yellow on the eye, which I also love. This shade is so much fun, and this is the most fun shade. I'm wearing it in my inner corner today because I can't stop using it. I just want to reach for this for my inner corner, for my lid. I just love this color. This is going to be the color of the season for me, of summer 2023. You can see I'm also wearing like very similar top today. This is a spot on gorgeous neon pastel shade that shows up on your skin. Whatever you see here, that's what you see on your eyes, and that's amazing. They did it right. They did the mattes right. They did colors right. I do have a dedicated video with 4 look tutorials, and I also used this palette already in several of my videos. There are reels on my channel. I just get so much inspiration from this palette because when I look at it, I just see more and more color combinations that I want to create. To me, this is almost like they wanted to create a summer warm tone palette, but with a punch, make it different. This is how it's done. I was loyal. So on the spot number 1, I did say I was loyal, didn't I? On the spot number 1, I do have my dream palette. This is a palette that is neutral. This is a palette that has some warmness, some coolness in it. This is a palette that has depth. This is a palette that has beautiful shimmers and mattes to work with. This is my dream palette. This palette was ranked as a #1 palette in my 2022 all eyeshadow palettes that I've tried that year, and I stay loyal to it. This is the greatest palette, the greatest neutral palette that's been made, in my opinion. This is my favorite. It's an amazing formula. There's good variety of colors and neutrals and different undertones, and it's just spectacular. Everything just looks gorgeous on eyes. It looks expensive. I mean, it is expensive, but it also looks expensive. There's also this beautiful duochrome shade. I think I've talked enough about this palette already, and you know how much I love it. I stay loyal. So these are all the palettes that I wanted to share with you today and put them into ranking. And let me know if you own any of the mid-size Natasha Denona palettes or even the mini ones. Let me know which Natasha Denona palette is your favorite. If you enjoy the rank and style videos and tutorials with the dedicated eyeshadow palettes, I will leave those playlists at the end of the video for you to enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, give this a big thumb up. If you're not yet a subscriber, I invite you to do so before you leave today. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today, and I will see you in my next videos.